Hello, hello, hello again. It is another segment in our empowerment series, and I would just love to, first of all, just thank you. You're such loyal, committed, on the ball resident panelists. I could not have asked a better Cody and Desiree. Desiree, another hat.
I
My names, us women are something else. If it's not Cody with the hairstyles, it's Desiree with the hats. This is me and the lipsticks. Oh, ladies, how are you?
We are
good.
fine. The hair, and the lips. We are amazing.
Oh, yes, I know, amazing. We are here. Our guest this week is having a little bit of an issue. Cody, you have just made it. Yes. Okay, so our guest is going to be about 10 minutes late. Uh, that's okay. I mean, that's a bit more than you have, Cody. But
Come on, I'm African. we
yeah,
we are allowed. We are 2 hours ahead. Some always ahead.
yes. Gosh. Yes. So what's the hat there now, Desiree? Yes.
So this is my
Position.
mantra: purpose, not position. So we're going to be. I've had this hat for a long time, but we're going to be selling hats in the fall for anyone who feels the same way that I do, and the power that we all believe we have, which is regardless of your position in life, you can make an impact.
Amen. Fantastic.
Love
Right,
that.
guys, for the benefit of those who might be joining us for the first time in a while, I would just love to ask my resident panelists to introduce themselves. So I will start with Cody, since we are always ribbing Cody. You go first, Cody.
Hi, my name is Cody, and I'm Ellie today.
Yes.
And I am the owner and founder of Silash. Silash lashes specifically made for women and men who've gone through cancer treatment, and they've lost their own lashes and they can't wear no more lashes. I'm also a TEDx speaker, and I'm also a mentor, and I am a business coach. And also, I'm a mom, and I am a cancer fundraiser. And we've got a function going on later on
Yes.
this year, and we'll talk about that later.
Okay, awesome, fantastic. I can't wait for us to get into that. Right now, Desiree.
Yes, I am Desiree Peterkin Bell. I lead a global public affairs firm. We work with people who want to make a difference, brands that matter, and movements, not moments. I'm also an international author. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm an impact maker. And as I mentioned earlier, I live by the mantra of purpose, not position.
Awesome. I don't know what happened there. I couldn't get you featured when you were speaking. So let me put you up there so they can see you properly. There is the fantastic Desiree. Yes, she's a lady who wears the hats. Hats. You wear so many hats. Us ladies wear so many hats. I think every one of us could just become a hat lady because we wear so
Yes.
many hats. And the hat that we're
Yep.
going to be talking about today is a hat of the political support, the lobbying, the activism that you do in the United States. Before I go into that, for those of you who might be living under a rock and not know who I am, who might be watching my streams, I am Bernie Davis, and I'm hailing from Wales. Yes. And I am like Cody, a TEDx speaker and a coach, a mentor. But I'd say I'm a business strategist. I empower. I work with the Welsh government, the local banks, universities, and my mantra is we go together or not at all. It's all about collaboration, not competition, and about helping each other, carrying each other along the way, and helping each other to be the best versions of ourselves and be that change. And so, with that in mind, that's why we decided to have Dr. Sally Penni joining us, MBE, joining us today because Sally is a barrister, practicing common law barrister here in the United Kingdom, and she's been trying to make a difference in her neck of the woods. And those of you who are in the UK, you know about the strikes that have been going on with barristers. So, we just want to just ask you to be patient and until Sally comes. All right. So in the meantime, let's talk. And I think since we're going to talk more political, legal stuff when Sally comes on with Desiree, Cody, just share with us the what you wanted to let us know about a bit about you and why you now have launched a cancer charity.
Actually, it's not really a cancer charity. They just cancer awards at this time, and we are going to
Sorry,
be doing
cancer awards. Sorry.
yes, year after year. And the purpose of doing this is to raise money for charities, not one particular charity, but different charities every year. And this year we're raising money for Prevent Breast Cancer because it's the only charity that focuses on preventing breast cancer before it happens. You know what you should do in order not to get breast cancer, than it's like actually treating breast cancer. And the reason why we've decided to come up with the Northwest Cancer Awards is because there is nothing quite like this. And for me and Heather and Kate, the two women that we're doing this with, last year they've got their own company. It's lingerie for women who are flat chested, who it's like they try and go and buy bras and stuff like that. They've chosen not to have reconstruction, or for some reason they can't have reconstruction, so they still want to look sexy. So we decided that I do lashes, they do lingerie, and we want women to find a same place to shop. So we decided to collaborate last year. So this year we decided that not only do we not have a Northwest Cancer Awards to celebrate the cancer heroes, not just people who've gone through cancer, them as well, but also people who've worked with people who've gone through cancer. But we also wanted to include diversity because sometimes, especially with cancer charities and cancer help places, you see that it's like the minorities are not featured much, or are not aware of the service that are offered in those local areas. So for us, it was not only celebrating those heroes, but then also bringing awareness to everyone, including the minorities in the Northwest.
Awesome. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thanks for that. And I just have to say, something just happened, guys, on screen. And there's a typo. Prestigious was spelled incorrectly, and Desiree just quietly messaged me for me to fix it. And that's how it works. That's how we fix each other's crown and not say anything about it.
Without hearing the world is cricket.
It's all sorted now. Thank you, Desiree. Right, brilliant. So Desiree, let's talk about Roe versus Wade. I was recently really, really privileged to be a judge at the Wales Online Diversity and Inclusion Awards, and I also had the privilege of sponsoring the gender equality category. And the winner of that award were the Women Equalities Network, who they ran a campaign successfully, Diverse 50/50. A lot of the focus of the Women Equality Network in Wales is on equality of legislation. Yes. And what I am very pleased to discover that after the awards, when I read up about their work, they had actually also been proactive in the whole matter of Roe versus Wade, and they wrote an open letter to the minister, Jane Hutt, asking what is Wales going to do to ensure that women's reproductive rights were continue to be enshrined. And they were successful in getting a response from the minister, and the minister underscored the importance of it, and also said she'd go further to take that letter to the other aspects of the cabinet and so on, to ensure that this was something that was protected. Now, I know a lot of us have views. Not everybody's going to agree with people with abortion. It's it is a very hot topic. But my view is that rights do not necessarily uh, come down to one or the other person's beliefs. If we are going to dictate our own and impose our own views forcefully on others, we then are bordering on levels of inhumanity, which I find to be extremely worrying, because I am a Christian. And would I make that choice for myself? That's my personal choice. But who am I to judge that person who feels that that's their only way out? That's what will protect their sanity. That's what will protect their well being. I can't judge that. Why are we to put ourselves in the place of the judge? And that is where I think even those of us who are not necessarily ones who know everything about the law, or the law relates to Roe versus Wade, we have a moral responsibility to really look at the issue as to whether or not we should be so hostile to others who make a decision which is personal to them. You know. So, Desiree,
That's a great you I think you summed it up perfectly.
yeah,
I think that is the most challenging part right now. I mean, this is deep here in the United States because it's also about elections having consequences. It's also about a blanket um, uh, provision or law that is now going to guide everyone's decision, right? The strike down of Roe v. Wade essentially means that the states get to make their own decisions and that the women in those states do not. What it neglects to pay attention to are the facts on the ground. Bernie, I love what you said, which is, and I too am a Christian. I'm a Christian woman. I always say I'm more spiritual than religious, though. I'm also an empath. And so for me, I would never, what I do in my home, what I do to my body, what I do between me and the Holy Spirit and the Holy Ghost is between
yes,
me and those things. And I
yes,
would never require anyone else to do the same, right? They have to walk their own path. There's also another data point here, and I'm excited that we're joined now by um,
yes. Welcome, Sally.
and that is, and hopefully we can get to talk about this. I'm going to just wrap this up because I really want to have a conversation, a broader conversation with everyone, which is the disproportionate, this Roe v. Wade ruling disproportionately impacts Black women.
Hmm.
And it disproportionately impacts Black women for a whole host of reasons, not just because Black women tend to have a proclivity for abortions, but simply because we have health issues that are 3 and 2 times as much of our counterparts. And when we have to make decisions, a lot of those times we are making a decision based on our health issues. And so that doesn't take into account the fact that we are all not the same, right? I have this conversation all the time. Yes, we are part of the human race. Yes, we are women, but we are women from different walks of life. Black
Yeah,
women in the United States disproportionately are impacted by fibroids. They are
yeah,
disproportionately, unfortunately, um, dying at higher rates when they do try to deliver, when they do give birth. That is just the facts here in this country. And then to force someone to deliver in the confines of those restrictions and challenges is essentially forcing them to not put themselves first and forcing them to basically relegate their position in society as less than human.
hmm. Oh, most definitely, most definitely. Sally, I'll just press pause there and welcome you. Are you back? Are you online yet, or you need to settle a little? Yeah.
I'm online. I'm just trying to change devices. So, um, just carry on. I'm on my phone presently. I'm just trying to get on my Mac.
Right. Okay. Right. All right. Well, when you're ready, just jump in. Okay. All
Okay.
right. Fantastic. But it's interesting that what you said, Desiree, and I let Cody speak before I do, but I do have my own personal experience. When I was to be born, I was one of those babies that my mother was told by the doctors that she should not have me because it was detrimental to her health, and she forced, thank God, and had me, but it made her very, 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 very ill. She nearly died after giving birth to me. And so, I remember her saying that good job that I was a very quiet baby, and I would just lie and smile and amuse myself because she could hardly attend to me, and I didn't get any breast milk bonding or anything. But but the other thing that I will say is that she had to, for medical reasons, after that she had to do that, and she didn't tell us until she almost passed because she held that guilt. And then she told us, and we were like, "My goodness, mom! You mean I'm glad you had me, but you know." Because she was very, very, she was a very unwell lady, my mother, and what you said, so Desiree, is very, very crucial, that people need to understand. People just lump this whole matter of abortion into, oh, people just don't want to any responsibilities. That is such a narrow view. Cody.
Um, yeah, and for me, first of all, there is something that I saw that really disturbed me. There was a lady who says that, who said something like, "I'm gonna have a, I'm gonna get pregnant so that I could get aborted." Now that's the extreme, and there are people like that who like to get a rise out of people. Now,
Mm,
then that gives people the right to say, "You see, this is why we are anti-abortion." But when you do a blanket statement like that, it's like women cannot have abortion, there are women who are still going to have abortion. What you are doing is endangering those women because they will find other ways that are not safe of having that abortion um, done. And abortion itself is something that no one takes abortion. It's like lying down. It's like I'll go and have a pregnant. I'll go and get pregnant every month or every year, whatever, and get an abortion. It's something that is you get emotionally attached the minute you get pregnant. So for you to then make that decision, it's not a decision. It's not like people do this for fun. In most cases, there is a reason, and it's a very compelling reason. So now, if you're saying that an adult who has weighed the pros and cons of having a baby and keeping the baby is now being told that you do not have that constitutional right to do what you feel is best for your body. I think there is it's a if people were saying we could look at this on a case to case basis, I would understand. But this blanket no abortion, we abolish abortion when you allow drugs, recreational drugs, and you say a woman's health comes last to men who make decisions that affect women, who will make a woman pregnant, walk away and go and sit in a tree and say, we are abolishing abortion. It's just, we are in 2023 and we are still speaking
yeah.
of me. It's really something that I can't wrap my head around.
Yeah,
It's
because they're criminalizing it.
Yes.
Essentially, they're criminalizing it,
people will still
and
have abortion, and it's just making it more dangerous for people because they will find ways of having an abortion, and that will endanger more lives than they're saving.
Yeah. And something they're criminalizing something that has been law since 1973.
yeah.
Right. And I think that's the part where people are like, what has changed so much from the time that, um, you know, women have earned that right, fought for that right, and families, right? Because it's not just women who are part of that fight. It's families, it's men, it's people who believe that a woman has the autonomy for and and to her body. right? That was a fight. That was a battle that was won, and now it was completely taken from in the United States, a Supreme Court that has made decisions beyond their boundaries, right? When they have all said before they were sworn in, many of them, that they would never touch this precedent because they recognize it as precedent and law, right? And so I'm, curious what Dr. Sally sees in her law profession in the UK. Here in the US, for us, we're nervous because if that precedent was struck down, that also means there are a ton of other precedents that can be struck down. So what does that mean? And what kind of class of citizens are we creating, of people who have and people who don't? People who have access and people who won't. People who have fought the battles and the people who are making the decisions, right? And so it's such a large, complicated issue. The other thing I want to say is, to Cody's point, there is no blanket answer for any of this stuff. There was a 10 and a 13-year-old guy who were both raped in Cleveland, Ohio. And so as a result of that rape, it resulted in pregnancies for both of them. They were sisters, unfortunately. And it sparked a huge conversation because at some point, people have to go back to their moral fixture and say, is it the right thing to force a child, 10 and 13, who have already been forcibly raped, to
Yes.
have these children? How is
Yeah.
that humane?
Yeah.
Right? Those are the
It, it,
questions that we're asking.
Yeah.
it is and I just keep going back to the one single point, and it is making a moral issue, people's moral views and one moral opinion law. And to me that is just, it's unacceptable. And where does it end? One fundamental thing that human beings have been given, as going back to being a Christian, one of the things about God is He gives you choice. Choice is the one thing that you have.
It gives you free will. There you
Free
go.
will. That's a fundamental. So where's that for these people? I just think it's wrong. I was watching this documentary also last night. It's kind of Sweden, and it's about Eva, and it said it's just a bit of a segue, but it's within context. It says everything's better than hookah, and it was about how a lady who was a sex worker was totally uh, she was failed by the social welfare system so drastically, and even in the face of when the gentleman who actually ended up killing her with a knife in the social services, the shelter that she was, putting the knife right through her, straight through out her to her back. That's how much force he did it. Even when they had prior hearings in the court, and he was exhibiting all sorts of behavior, maniacal behavior. Even the system thought was better for the children than the mother, simply because she was a sex worker. And all the laws that are going on there, and we've got to be careful that we make our own moral convictions something that we impose on people and criminalizing it.
Yeah.
You know, we've got
I
to be
mean,
careful.
yeah. The question is, well, the other question is, who is essentially who essentially is in charge of the moral authority now,
Well, it's usually a
right?
patriarchal society. That's what we're looking at, aren't we?
Right. So that's the question, right? Is it the courts? Is it a politician? Is it like who is now the moral police, right? And and what is that role? And now do we have to think through all of those things when we are, trying to just exist in the world? That's not, you know, again, I'm a Christian and God says, bring your tithe, you
Mhm.
weak, your poor. That's what the United States says. God says, build a relationship with me directly, right? And so that should be what the focus is. Everyone makes their
Yeah,
own decision. You know, when you get to the
exactly,
pearly,
exactly.
you get to those pearly gates, you have to stand on
It's
your
you
own.
and God. Yes, it's between you and God. So I can't see that more. I can't see the dilemma. I can't see the moral dilemma between me believing for myself that that's not my choice, uh, and somebody else who thinking it's theirs. They have a right.
And for me, I think for me, as someone who I'm probably going to get a lot of stick, who was a Christian and now more spiritual than Christian, it was because of these ultimates, like absolutes, that sometimes you find that there is no leeway, there is no margin. For me, when I started to question Christianity is when I was going through cancer, because the people who were most cruel in their judgment of me got through the journey were Christians. And I read somewhere, someone said, if it wasn't for Christians, I would be a Christian. And that,
Well, Cody,
No, it's good.
I always say to people,
That's good.
right? Do not let God's people put you off God.
Right. It's good.
Because the truth is,
but
Cody,
the
I've
thing
been
is,
there. I've been there. I'm one of those people. I was born in the church. I know we're segueing a bit. Sally, let us know when you're ready. But I was born in the church, and I saw these things, and I thought, okay, that's it. And then I realized, you know what? You cannot let the people dictate and let you know who God is. You got to know Him for yourself. You got to experience Him for
exactly,
yourself, and that
and
is what
that
we're
is what
talking
I
about
chose
with
to do.
the whole.
That is why I chose to be spiritual, because I believe in God. Absolutely, there are
Yes.
things that have happened in my life that could never have happened as if it wasn't for God. So I do absolutely believe in God. But this other part is what I'm struggling with. And I think that every religion is taking us on the same path. We are all going to God, whichever way, whatever we call them, is all about. Because when you look at all religions, the base of them, we are all similar. We are all speaking different languages, but saying exactly the same thing. So when it comes to religion, when you say absolutely no, you can't say that, because you're talking to different people who've got different backgrounds, who've got different realities. So when you say you absolutely cannot do this, it then makes it very hard to
Yeah, but
encompass
God is not a
everybody.
God of absolutes. It's man who brings in absolutes. God is not a
Absolutely,
God of
this is what
absolutes.
I'm saying, because these are the things that they use to back up these arguments, and it's very hard to argue with somebody who absolutely think that they're absolutely right. Because if you
Yes,
can see that I am coming from a different place from you, you're
Mm.
seeing I'm seeing mine is only because we're sitting on opposite side of the table, but we are both right. But if
yes,
you can absolutely only see nine, then you then look at me as if I'm not, I'm mad, or I do not understand, when we are actually all right, both right. So you should be able to say, tell me why you think this is six. Then I'll explain, from where I'm standing, this is six. From where you're standing, it's nine. So we are both right. We're just saying it from a different level. But you
Mhm.
can't say absolutely,
yeah,
that's not.
yeah, yes. I know, but human beings love to do that. They love to tie things on and put them in a little box and put a nice bow on it, and that's it. And
Yeah.
it doesn't work like that, because going back to the point from what Cody Desiree said from the very beginning, with this whole matter of abortion, we try to just put it in the box of the moral of morality. Oh, people are out there doing what they want to do. They're not being
Mhm.
responsible, and then they don't want the responsibility afterwards. No, there is health. There are health issues. There are people who've been raped. There are people who've been abused. There are children whose lives could be lost if they are forced to go through to
Mhm.
have children. And all of those things have to be taken into consideration. And that is why it's just like, come Sally, you need to come in now, because we're talking about the rule of law. Yes. I mean, at the end of the day, you can't. You're supposed to be. It's based on protecting the one, which is why you have the burden of proof so high. Because it's better to have. You don't want to have one innocent person, yes, condemned. So you've got. So if what about those innocent people? in the whole abortion debate, the Roe versus Wade debate. And I will underscore it. It's not my choice, but I am not advocating, and I'm not going to back people who are going to criminalize people who make that personal choice and dictate to people and take away people's rights. And the fundamental right that we all got when we were born from God is the right to choose.
Yep.
You know, Kali, can you join in now? Would you mind joining and first just introducing yourself, Sally? We did a little bit of an introduction to let them know you were coming on.
Oh,
But
yeah.
would you mind? Yes.
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Sally Penny. You can see my name on the banners behind me. And I'm a lawyer. I'm a barrister, an English lawyer. So I don't know if this is a global stream.
Yes.
And so it's been really interesting listening to your discussion. Yeah, I practice law and I have done for 23 years. Outside of that, I set up Women in the Law UK. I have a podcast and I've written several books. So thank you so much for inviting me on, Bernie. Nice to meet
Pleasure.
you, Desiree and Cody. So yeah, that's me. I'm not familiar with the format, so I don't know if there are questions or whether we just
No, it's a bit like Loose Women, where we just have a topic and we just chew over the topic, and we just you know deal with the hard hitting issues. And this week it was about the overturning of Roe versus Wade, as you know, and the barrister strikes. So we wanted your perspective. Desiree works very she does a lot of work in the political sphere, in with activism, with representing people's voices over there in the United States. She's worked on large campaigns like Barack Obama. She does a lot of work still with the White House. Her daughter is also a representative for a large organization there. She's a voice for against bullying. So they're regularly doing a lot of work in that sphere. And so as a result of that, the whole Roe versus Wade dilemma at the moment was something that, of course, touched Desiree's heart, touched all of our hearts, really. So I thought it would have
yeah.
been great to have you coming on, Salik, on the heels of your recent TED Talk. And your recent TED Talk was about love. Can love conquer hate? Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Um,
yes. So I just thought it was a great opportunity for you to come and speak and just share with us. So, please feel free.
well, thank you for inviting. Firstly, I'm not a loose women kind of girl, I'm afraid.
The concept
Uh,
in terms of just free speaking.
yeah, I think you all do it better than me. I'm more used to the courtroom. But firstly, Roe v. Wade, which was the reversal of the American decision on abortion, and the only views I express are my own. But it does seem like a backwards step. I'm not very political, so I'm not going to express my political views on many grounds because it's taken away the freedom of choice, and it
Mm-hmm.
seems for the American Supreme Court, which houses as we the same as ours to a large extent the most intelligent um, members of the Supreme Court, it does seem like an odd decision. Of course, it's an American decision and not an English decision, so we should make that distinction. But it does seem like we have gone backwards for women's rights. And speaking with my women in the law rights, Women in the Law UK head on, it does seem like a backward step on women's rights, logically. And it does seem, I think it was Desiree who was saying, I don't know what the campaigns or the views were of those sitting in the American Supreme Court prior to their appointments there, but it does seem as though it's out of sync, which of course has been reflected by the huge amount of protests ever since the reversal of Roe versus Wade. So it feels like, if Ruth Bader Ginsburg were still alive, the notorious RBG, I don't know if many people will know her from the Netflix documentary. I know her from reading many of her judgments. And she died, sadly, but I think she would be turning, actually, and be very disappointed about the judgment, because we must always respect the rule of law. I think you've covered the issues about victims who may not want pregnancies very well. So I have very little to add to any of those things, but it does seem out of sync. What's interesting for me to see is looking at the court and the makeup of the court and looking at the three judges who dissented. I'm really interested to see if there will be some class actions or any cases coming up by way of not an appeal, but finding their way there. Of course, if it was England, we would go to the European Court of Human Rights, for example, which is sort of outside of our jurisdiction, to see if there was a case. So it'll be really interesting to see what the follow-up position is now, thereafter, looking at the makeup of the Supreme Court and looking at the fact that they've now got, or you've now got, Desiree, the first Black female member of that Supreme Court, and what she will do.
Yes, Ketanji Brown Jackson, and I think it's always I'm always fascinated to hear how other people see, particularly outside of the country, outside of the U.S., our court system, because it is, and I think unfortunately for us right now in this country, politics is overriding legality, right? And which is problematic. So
yes, because we don't have that here. We don't.
I know, that's why I'm like, hey, how's your housing over there? Is it good?
Yeah, listen, I mean, we're not brilliant on diversity, but we're working on it. But we are still an independent judiciary. People are not appointed to our high courts by politicians, and we must celebrate that in England.
And that is a huge. And you see the difference, right? The biggest difference is, for us, where on paper, they should be the smartest folks. Although, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson is arguably the most qualified on that bench.
Yeah,
I will argue that. Everyone else, some people have seen how public their confirmation process were. I think the reality is each one of those folks who were on the conservative side were asked that same question about precedent and whether or not they would even acknowledge precedent, right? And I think when you're talking just from a legal standpoint, that is the most important thing you can do. In the United States, we have huge cases. Roe v. Wade, right, which determined a woman's right to choose. Brown v. Board of Education, which determined that schools had to have equal resources. Title IX, which determined that women's sports have to be funded the same way. These are cases, these are decisions, legal decisions that have been made. Unfortunately, what the overturning of Roe v. Wade does is question all of those now laws, right? Nothing is sacred and safe. And that's a very scary place to be.
And coming up from what you've just said, Desiree, I know that we might not, or we say, and it's in actual fact, it doesn't. The judiciary isn't actually dictated to by politics. But I think there is some influence, and there are people who are saying, are we? Because there is this feeling that whatever happens in America, we follow suit. And there are those who are asking the question, are we going to be doing that here in the United Kingdom? And I before Sally came on, as I mentioned earlier on, there actually are groups that have already actively, proactively written letters to their ministers of government to say, please, give us some assurances that this is not going to happen. So I really do hope that it's not a matter of somebody, of the United States sneezing and the rest of the world catching a cold, because that would be dire.
Well, Cody.
So I was just going to ask Desiree, is there anything that sparked this? Normally something happens, something political, something social that happens, and then a conversation starts. And is there anything that or you might think that started this whole thing in the first place? What sparked this whole thing to begin with?
Yes. And this is where I say elections matter, and I think what people didn't see years ago, right, when this TV show host was running for president here in the US, and everyone was like, who's that guy? And he could never win. And then he won. His name was Trump, right? When Trump got in, right? No, reality. When Trump got in, what is the first thing that he did? He focused on the federal courts and he focused on the Supreme Court. That's what he did. Elections in our country have big consequences, which is why I tell people the way we have to operate here on the ground in this country is you have to pay attention to everything. So, does your vote count? Any person who ever asked that question probably is scratching their head right now because yeah, your vote counted. The vote that you took, the vote that you didn't take, right?
Uh-huh.
You making a choice not to vote.
Mm.
Well, that and that the way, as Dr. Saller is explaining, the way our process works here in the United States is the politicians appoint the judges. That's how that works. So, and a politician is probably going to appoint a judge who has the same ideological background, belief, morality,
Yes. Yeah.
right? And so they are going to mirror who they are and what they stand for
Yes.
and what the platform represents. And that's exactly what happened,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So this
And it's about being
process happened
aware.
years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's about being aware, because at the end of the day, you said, Desiree, to those of you who thought your vote didn't count, it counted, whether you voted or not. Now, a lot of the problems that we're having is the whole matter of not paying attention. As Cody was asking, where did it all come from? Where did it
Mm.
start? We're not paying attention. We're only listening to the people that we agree with. Yes, they have tied us up into this group, this information bubble, and filter, where you only see and hear the comments, the activities of the people that you agree with and that engage with. And so when you go on social media now, or even on Google, I can tell you now, all of you listening to me, you try it with 3 different people. Like I've tried it. So for myself, my uppity mobile 30-year-old daughter in London, my conspiracy theorist 39-year-old son, the 3 of us, you Google one word, same time, and see the difference in your results. Yes? So we are, by being narrow in how we engage with the social platforms, we're not knowing what's happening. That is how Trump won in the first place, because everybody thought he had no supporters. No, you just didn't see his supporters. Yes. So it is our responsibility to, just going back to the whole context of Roe, why we're not happy with the overturn of Roe versus Wade, is you do not only pay attention with those things that you agree with. Comment, ask opinion, engage, so you can keep in the loop. Read everybody's newspapers. Go online, read the reports from magazines and newspapers you don't agree, because otherwise you're not going to know what's happening. It's going to catch you off guard. And that
Yes,
is what
but
Do you not
yeah.
think that sometimes it's because we shout people down when we do not agree with them? Because with the Trump incident or with Boris Johnson or ever, people assume that no one likes Trump, and the news was no one likes Trump and no one likes Boris Johnson, no one likes Brexit. But people who were talking pro Brexit, the minute they started talking or pro Trump, because we thought it was so ridiculous, people will shout them down, and we never got to hear their side of the story. So you
exactly.
can't effectively argue with someone when you don't know where they're coming from. So they just kept quiet and they just said, see you at the ballot box.
Yeah,
And we
and we are
got so
polarized.
most of the time because we shout people down. We think it's so ridiculous that abortion should be banned. We've never taken time to try and understand the people who are saying it should be banned. What is it that you say? Tell me. Put my emotions aside and let me understand, because only then can we then effectively argue our case when we see where they're coming from. Because most of the time we think because we're right, everybody sees the world the way
Yeah,
we
we
see
all
it.
think we're right. We need to be open to hear other people's opinions. Otherwise, we just, like I said, we're going to just be imprisoned in our own, in a prison of our own mutual admiration society, which we've created for ourselves.
Or we
and
worry about our
Yeah.
own stuff, right? And it's funny, I always think about this poem in the so it says, first they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. And then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. The issue we have, and we've talked about these in our larger conversations, Bernie, is in these larger global conversations, it is ridiculous to think that one thing does not connect to another.
oh,
Right? It is ridiculous. It's ridiculous to think that just because something is happening here, we also saw it in the pandemic. We were watching what was
yes,
happening in China, and we was like,
yes,
"Oh, what's happening over there? Glad we ain't
exactly.
Chinese, right?" And then
Yes,
what happened? Yeah, the whole world
exactly.
shut down.
I know. Desiree, you're so right. You've all actually highlighted several important issues, and maybe I can reply. Firstly, I'm losing my voice, which is not good for a lawyer, is it? So I need to rest it a little bit. The first point, actually, which was what Cody started saying, is about information and the
Yes,
opportunity to have a discussion and discourse. And we don't have that
yes,
anymore. So, I had a conversation earlier today about when in certain circles, the women being expected to go home and peel the potatoes, make lunch, and the men go off in the pub. And I was saying, I've not been in that situation for so long, and I'm never really in that situation anymore. That when it happens, or the men go off in the smoking room, and then I'm just stuck with a load of housewives. I'm a bit kind of like, I can make conversation out of a potato or, a wall, if you like, and the housewives have got a lot to say on a lot of things. But just, an assumption that that's what's going to happen and not the opportunity. So I do think we've lost the art of discussion and being in situations where we can have, I'm a lawyer, so we're listening to both sets of arguments, and then I'm persuading you about mine particularly, or in judges. We have lost that. And then there is an issue about the source of information and the source of data, where it comes from. Young people do not read newspapers anymore in
They do
England.
not.
Yeah, they're not
My
reading.
daughter gets her news from TikTok, and I force her to read a real article.
I know. And Desiree, though, it takes too long. So I'm like, yeah, it's true. I'm thinking, right, my legal books, I need to put them into Audible, because my children's books, for example, more people buy them internationally because someone's reading to them. I'm like, what about the illustrations? What about the feel of them? So I'm thinking, actually, the attention span is very small. So we need to capture what it is that we want them to have. And it's true, they're not reading newspapers, and they're certainly not reading broadsheets, as I would call them, because I'm old-fashioned. They probably, if they do reading maybe the red tops. We have smaller newspapers here. I can't remember what they're called in America. And actually, we need to be getting people to read a variety of sources of information before they reach an opinion. And so
yeah,
the Roe versus, Wade argument, I suppose, your point that we've been caught off guard is probably because we're not all sitting down looking at the old precedents or, the very old cases, which have changed so much. And thinking, oh, will that be overturned or whatever? So when it happens in America, we're thinking, gosh, how's that happened? I don't think, Bernie, that there's a risk of that happening here in England because actually, I'm not dissing the American judicial system, although you do have high amount of miscarriages of
No,
justice.
it's okay. You can go ahead.
It's not my style to diss anyone, quite frankly. But I don't, we've also got miscarriages here, but we're very good at correcting them and trying to make sure they don't occur again. But I don't think people should suddenly start going crazy over the shock that will be repeated here in the United Kingdom with many of our laws. And, we had a big case here about the prorogation of Parliament, whether actually the government could just shut shop and say, that's it. It was over Brexit. And it was the first time that so many people ever watched, cases on television. Even lawyers, you go in the robing room, everyone's like, ooh, it's the judgment. And so I think for my part, when these awful things happen, I'm quite keen because it gets people thinking about the rule of law. It gets the people thinking about what are the other laws protecting characteristics and rights, and engaging in the laws. So this is an awful, the overturn is awful to some of us, as I say, talking with my women in the law hat on, and from a rights perspective. But in truth, I think it's getting us talking about laws, engaging in laws. What are those fundamental rights? And also in England, thinking, wow, what happens in America? Does that happen here? How are the laws made? Who makes the laws? What are the views of the people there? What are the qualifications of the people there? And that leads me to representation. Who are making these decisions? Because actually we don't make laws in courts. We only apply the laws which are made by Parliament, the UK. And your system is the same, Desiree. So in a way, it's good to have the engagement, because now I'm thinking young people will be thinking, wow, I want to be a lawyer so I could overturn that ruling. Or, that's not the only ruling you've got, to be fair, Desiree. I notice your recent ruling on climate change is a bit chaotic.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's a whole other, yeah. So you've got some crazy stuff going on there. I'm not sure.
100%. And again, to your point, though, it's also about who's representing, right? And I'll throw this in there because we're having this conversation, but we already had this fight. No representation, no taxation without representation. You know what I mean? Like, we had this fight a long time ago. So now folks literally are asking themselves this question: what are my rights, right? As a United States citizen, to be blunt. Right? In this global world, what are my rights? And why are my rights different than that person's over there? Right? You have on the world stage now, to your point, the entire world looking at the United States and questioning what we have defined as the beacon of hope and quality and everything. All those things are being challenged. All of them.
Yeah, we are out here clutching our pearls and like, what happened?
Right.
Well, I know. Bernie wants me to talk about barrister strikes, but
yes,
there is an issue. I don't know if we've got long enough, have we? I'll come back and talk about barrister strikes. We're still on strikes.
Yeah, but please do just mention it briefly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I'll come back and talk about it in a longer time. So, in England, just very quickly, Desiree, and maybe for the global audience, we still have solicitors and barristers. We don't have lawyers, which they have in America, which is one fused profession. And I think you would have litigators, who are the people who go into court, right? Yeah. So we have in the law firms, they will have litigators, but essentially we have barristers, and barristers represent criminals and the state, so they're prosecutors and defenders. But we're still independent, so we don't have, I think in America you have the state's defense system, right? And people can work for that, right? We do have that, but very few lawyers work for them, really. I don't know the statistics, so please don't ask. And then we have the Crown Prosecution Service and lawyers who work there. So I suppose that would be like the attorney's office. But then we have independent barristers, which is what I'm like, and we wear a wig and a gown. I haven't got my wig and gown because American people, even English people, love the wig and gown. It's made from horsehair. It's around somewhere, but my dog is here, so she's probably chewing it. And so those people who work in the criminal sector, we're on strike. And the reason is this, and I'm not an officer of the CBA, but let me just recount the basic facts. It's not just about money. It's about, firstly, it's about the cost to become a barrister, right? So the training costs £13,000. And then, of course, there's debt. So a lot of young people who come to become barristers now have a huge amount of debt. But in the first 3 years, they earn £12,200 as a medium annual income. Never mind cost of living, which is a minus. So people are going to court and they're not actually earning any money for that time. Bearing in mind they've got debts which they have to deal with. Now, move forward a little bit. Last year, 40% of specialist criminal barristers left the profession. Yeah, so that means that withstanding COVID, if you are a victim of crime, your case won't be heard for at least 3 years, which is appalling, whatever that crime may be, right? If you're a defendant, an accused person, your case won't be heard. So you could be a young person who probably turns 18 in the time before your case comes. And so it's not a dispute per se, just about pay. And last year, 567 trials were postponed because simply there were no barristers to prosecute or defend the cases. You see what I mean? So the fee is academic. Now, for me, I spend a lot of time convincing young people in schools, in universities, in FE colleges to think about their rights and to think about the law and how they can use the law for them, and to think about becoming lawyers. Right? It's a representation point from people who are from socially mobile backgrounds to black people and indeed women.
Sally, I'm going to have to interject there. We have 4 minutes left.
Okay, well, I'll be quick.
No, hang on. We have 4 minutes left, and we have each one of us have to give their final word. Can you give me permission to announce that this is part 1, and we have part 2, because you've done a good introduction. We have part 2 next month.
Yes, perfect.
Yes, fantastic. So, guys, we'll be back for part 2. That's the introduction, which is whet your appetite. And we're going to do part 2 end of August. Fantastic. So now is the time when each one of our panelists will give their last word, a minute each. Just say, what is it out of this conversation you'd like the audience to take away? So let's start with Cody.
I think for me, I need to listen more. I think just for all of us, I think being able to, somebody said, I might not agree with what you say, but I would defend your right to say it to the death. And I think that is important, that just because I do not agree with what you say doesn't mean that your point is invalid. I should understand where you come from and sometimes just say, I agree to disagree with you, but your point is valid.
Yes, that's fantastic. So we agree to disagree and validate each person's view. Yes. Desiree?
For me, I have to start with elections matter.
Yes.
Because of the
Yes.
topic with Roe v. Wade, and no person should feel hopeless or feel like they only exist in a world that matters, where all the things that they want to focus on matters. I always say purpose, not position. That's the hat that I have on, which is, despite our positions in the world, we have a purpose to make an impact. And we can all do it collectively, and we can do it individually.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Sally?
Well, I've not been privy to the entire conversation, so my takeaway would be to learn more about the American system and what's going on over there and its impact on the American citizens. But I don't know. Sometimes people have a call to action would be for people to look at the fundamental rights, whether in America, whether in globally, within England. What are the rights that you value the most? And what are they? And also for people to think about what are the laws that they would like to change, because that really gets people thinking. When I ask that of children in schools, they're really engaged. They say we want to be able to vote, for example. And I think that I'd really like people to think about what are the laws that mean the most to them, and what are the laws they'd like to change. And that really gets you thinking.
Yes, exactly. Be engaged and yeah, with what's going on in your room, because it will happen for you in any event. So you need to be a part of it and understand the laws that matter and that impact upon you. For me, I just have been taken back to my youth and the book To Kill a Mockingbird, where I think it was Atticus Finch who said it, or maybe it was what was the little girl's name? Was it Bill? Little girl, I can't remember. You said, until you are able to walk around in another man's shoe, put another man's shoe on and walk around in it, you'll never know what it is like to be them. And so that's what we've got to do. We've got to be in touch with our humanity, and we've got to resist the urge, the mob the urge to judge, and the urge to be final on things that really and truly are not our business, because everybody has autonomy over their own body. So that's what I'd like us to think about. And yes, so we have, and that's it. It's a wrap. It's 6 o'clock. Thank you so much. Fantastic. Thank you, Sally, Cody, Desiree. Part one is over. Part two next month. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you,
Bye.
ladies.
What's
Thank
up?
you.
Thank you.
Uh,